All right, I'm going to call the Neary Building Committee meeting to order. It is Monday, January 29th, 2024. It is 7:01 p.m. We have 5 of our 7 voting members present, so we do have a quorum, and we have a number of our ex officio members present as well. We do have a very short agenda at the back end of this, but we are going to start directly with Jason, and I'll let Jim introduce him while I bring him over.
Sure. So Jason is with the state. He's done these presentations for other districts, and he'll basically just run through the do's and don'ts of ballot questions and the campaign finance law. Basically, the funds that we have for the feasibility study are for strictly the feasibility work. We cannot have any of those resources be for the lead up to the ballot question. That's technically a campaign. So it's just that division between the two. And obviously Jason can speak in more detail, but that's the purpose of tonight. We always like to do it at the very start of the process in order to just make sure we're proceeding correctly and not breaking any rules. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jason if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, we love it when you try not to break the rules. So for having me. So I'm Jason Tate. I'm the education director at OCPF, and for the most part, I do candidate trainings. Like your school board members, your select board members, state reps, state senators. They have a bunch of campaign finance rules, and I spend a lot of my time training them on the campaign finance law. Then there's the world of ballot questions. It's almost like a totally different category because the rules are completely different. I do those trainings as well. They're a little more difficult to do. When you're dealing with candidates, I don't know if we have any office holders on this call, but when you're dealing with candidates, everything's mostly in black and white. They can take $1,000. They can't take any business money, those sorts of rules. It's black and white. When we're dealing with ballot question campaigns and the use of public resources, there are a lot of gray areas. So as we go through this today, you may have questions. And there might be times when I say, you know what? That's something that we're going to have to get back to you on, because our lawyers are going to have to get around a table and discuss it and figure out whether or not it complies with the campaign finance law. So over the next 30 minutes or so, I'm going to take you through a very quick overview of the rules for public employees. For us, a public employee is someone who's appointed and compensated. The rules for money inside of school buildings. And then we're going to jump into public resources, which is mostly why you're here today. By the way, most of everything that we're going to talk about today can be found on our website. It's just helpful to have me here tonight to sort of lay it all out in layman's terms with a slideshow, knowing that you can always go to our website, or you can always go to your email account and send us an email. We get many, many emails on these issues. I answered a question recently for a new school, actually. And the question went something like this. I've changed the details a little bit, but the superintendent, he was getting questions from the public. The public was saying, hey, I know you guys want this new school, but what's wrong with the one we have right now? He wanted to take one of his communications folks at the school department, an AV person, and walk around the school. They could point out the leaky pipes and the cracked walls and the small classrooms that were not sufficient in the science department, and then take that video, explain these are the deficiencies, and this is why we're asking for a new school. He never asked, whether or not people could vote yes. He's just saying, this is what we're doing. He wanted to know if they could post that to the website, for the school website, an MP4 file. And those are the kind of questions that we take. The answer to that was yes, but just be cautious. You are using public resources. You are making a video. How are they able to post that to the website? And we'll discuss those intricacies as we go along here tonight. But feel free to ask questions as we go along, so that you can walk away from here pretty confident that that you know what the rules are. I'm going to share my screen now.
And Jason, while you share your screen, just for your benefit, We have compensated employees of the town and school district here.
Mhm.
We also have elected members of school committee and select board that are subject to compensation, albeit very minor. And we have volunteer members that are appointed. So you have a whole gamut, just as you think about some of your presentation tonight.
Very good, thank you. So just a quick introduction to OCPF, and I'm going to go to my website here. This is the OCPF website. Like I said, our primary focus is on electioneering and the money that's used to get people elected or to get ballot questions passed or defeated. And it's all about disclosure for us. So we spend, 99% of our time helping candidates and ballot question committees with the disclosure process. There's money being raised, money being spent, and the bottom line is that has to be disclosed to the public. That's our primary function. I just wanted to show you real quick how it works, so you kind of get a feel from where we come, where we stand, and then we'll jump right into public resources. So this is our website. We get about 40,000 campaign finance reports a year, and if we were just to display them on our website, it wouldn't make a lot of sense. So they're e-filed with our office. Folks like state reps, state senators, statewide candidates, county candidates like your sheriffs, all mayors. All these reports are being filed with us, and we stick it into a database. This is our most popular search function right here, search contributions. And if I am a candidate or a ballot question in a city or town, and I want to find out who the donors are, you can very easily go here and you can find out who the donors are in the town. In this situation, I'm gonna go to Southborough. I see that there are more than 7,000 donors. I only want the big money donors, so I'm gonna put 1,000 in. That's the most that an individual can give to a candidate. And now it's a more manageable list of 273. If I'm running a ballot question in town, or I'm running a campaign, I know that I can get a list of the so-called big money donors and say, oh yeah, I know Robert Johnson. I should have invited him to my fundraiser. This is how folks use our website. Political consultants, journalists, candidates, ballot question committees, they go to our website and they search our database. I'm going to point out a few helpful guides for you. If you were to go here to our guides page, campaign finance guides, and I'm going to type in ballot here, that'll pull up the ballot question guide. This is the municipal ballot question guide. We try and summarize the entire campaign finance law in this guide. Much of what we're going to talk about here today is here. So if any of you end up getting involved with ballot question committees, or you just want to review this, it's there. It's available under the guides link right here on the front page of our website. Now, on the local level, you're talking about select board members, school committee members, local ballot questions. You're not actually filing those reports with us. Those campaign finance reports are filed with the local clerk, and then the local clerk, if it exceeds $1,000 in activity, will post that to the front page of the website. And we try and accommodate town folks that way by having our disclosure map here at the bottom, and you can look up your own town reports by finding your town and you can search the reports that way. No, it's not functioning right now, but I think you get the point. So that's OCPF in a nutshell. We're all about disclosure. But like I said, we get a lot of questions when these municipal ballot questions are happening. And so to start it off, let's talk about public employees. We're looking at one right now, a school teacher. She's appointed and she's compensated. And the rule in Massachusetts, and it's a very strict rule, is that appointed and compensated public employees may not ask for money or receive money for any political purpose. 24/7, nationwide, public employees have to stay away from the money. For example, this school teacher here, she is on Facebook one day and she sees that the ballot question that's advocating for a new school is having a fundraiser Friday night. So she takes that post and she reposts it to her 400 friends on Facebook. The law says that public employees may not directly or indirectly solicit or receive. Our office would say she violated the law. She's a public school teacher, and she's asking her 400 followers, or at least advertising to them, that they can or should attend a fundraiser for the Vote Yes committee. So this is called Section 13 of the campaign finance law. And public employees who might get involved with ballot questions, they can hold signs, they can do other things, but they do have to stay away from the money, raising funds for ballot question campaigns. The rule in buildings. Fundraising in buildings used for governmental purposes is prohibited. We're looking at a library here, but that would include, schools. It would include senior centers and libraries and all sorts of different government buildings. Fundraising can't happen in the four walls of those buildings. So if a Vote Yes ballot question committee or a Vote No ballot question committee wants to raise money, they shouldn't do so at the library or other government buildings. Where might a ballot question committee trip up on this? It's when they send out their invitations. You can imagine the ballot question committee getting together, and some of you might even be involved with that. And you're sending out invitations. It's $50 a night. It's $50 a ticket. There's going to be one big night. You're going to try and raise some money to buy some lawn signs. And the person in charge of this ballot question committee says, "Oh my goodness, we forgot to invite the police chief. I know that she's for this project. Can someone send an invitation to the police chief?" Well, someone, the volunteer, thinks, police chief, police department. They send the invitation into the government building. That's considered a prohibited solicitation in a government building, according to the courts. So just something to look out for if you get involved with the ballot question committee. No fundraising in government buildings, please. Now, public employees in government buildings, I could talk about that for 30 minutes alone. I just wanted to give you a flavor for it so that we could jump into the public resources portion of this, which is really why we're here tonight. So the campaign finance law prohibits the use of public resources for campaign purposes. And when I say the campaign finance law, I'm really looking at two different sections of law and a court decision. So the Anderson decision goes back to the 70s. What happened was the city of Boston, they appropriated $1 million to advocate for a tax issue as a ballot question. And some taxpayers in town said, "That's not fair. We're against this question, and you're going to use our tax money to advocate for it." They went to court, and the Supreme Judicial Court sided with the taxpayers, saying it's true. The state law prohibits the use of public resources for campaign purposes. So from that court decision, and then our law, which is Chapter 55, the second one you see there, Section 22A, which prohibits the use of public resources. And then another section of law that's administered by the Elections Division, Chapter 53, which allows a community only once to inform residents of the ballot question to distribute information. From those sections of law, we've sort of built this library of legal advice on how to navigate the issue of public resources. So when we're dealing with public resources at our office at OCPF, we're basically looking for three things. Was it a distribution that was unsolicited? Were public funds used to distribute that message? And does it have to do with an election? And if the answer is yes to all of those, generally a violation has occurred. What can some of the violations look like? We're looking at a bunch of kids here with backpacks. You can imagine a school principal getting nervous. The vote's coming up, and he doesn't really know which way it's going to go. He's getting nervous, so he makes a little flyer that says, "Please vote yes on the project. If we don't, we're going to lose accreditation." Makes 1,000 of those, hands them out to the teachers. The teachers put them in the backpacks of the kids to take home to the parents. We'd say that's the use of public resources, time, paper, for a political purpose, and prohibited. Just trying to give you a flavor of some of the things that you may see. Mass mailings would be prohibited. If you have a postage machine at school, you wouldn't want to send out a mailing to the public unsolicited, informing them, even objective material, informing them of the ballot question coming up. Robocalls when you cancel school. You have that robocall system. You wouldn't want to use that to inform people of the ballot question election and the reasons why they should vote yes or no. And the school newsletter, our legal department has determined that a school newsletter is public resources. A school newsletter is a public resource and shouldn't be used to advocate for or against the ballot question or even provide information about the ballot question. As you can see, as we're going along here, it seems like a school official's hands are tied, and that's a fair feeling to have, that there's not a lot that a school department can do to get the word out. That's why we talk about ballot question committees. That's really the job of a ballot question committee, to raise funds and get the word out to voters. This is the section of law that we don't administer, the state elections division does. But this is a section of law that if your legislative body in town adopts it, you are able to send some information to the public unsolicited about the ballot question. Now, that's about as far as I take it, because we don't have any authority over this law, but I'm just letting you know in case you wanted to let your town solicitor or somebody in town take a look at it, and perhaps you could adopt these provisions and send information to the public in this instance. It's section 18B of chapter 53. There are some things that can be distributed. If something is requested by the public, it's okay. You know, the school department might get requests from voters saying, hey, what's going on with this ballot question? Can you send me some information? You know, a secretary in the office can mail someone information or email them information. That's fine. That's not the use of public resources for campaign purposes. Also, you do have that, you do have the ability to send out a notification of an upcoming election. It's restricted to the time, date, and place, just a brief neutral title, but you can let voters know that an election's coming up for a ballot question. What I would suggest is that if you're going to send something out like that, like by email maybe to the parents, that you let us take a look at the script just to make sure that it's in compliance with the law before you send something out like that to the public. We also ask that you call another state agency called the State Ethics Commission. They do have some guidance to give on these notifications of upcoming elections. So check with OCPF before you do it, and check with the State Ethics Commission, please. Some other permissible actions by appointed officials. When I say appointed officials, I'm thinking of school principals, maybe the budget director for the town, town manager, superintendent. They can take a position on a ballot question. They don't have to remain neutral. They can take positions on ballot questions. They can prepare materials in the course of their duties. They should, if they're doing their job right. They do need to figure out, you know, how much will taxes go up? Get building plans, have the whole thing put together so that for a massive project, if it's going to come up. They can hold public meetings and forums. There can be at the senior center, maybe they have a big dining hall area at the senior center. The superintendent can arrange, or a principal can arrange for a public meeting there in the evening time and show up and talk about the project, maybe have a PowerPoint presentation to go through and explain to the public what the project entails. At that meeting at the senior center, you can distribute flyers, maybe a one-pager that explains what's going on and why a school's being proposed or new construction. Also, you know, the local media may call the superintendent or other officials in the school and say, hey, I need information on this aspect of the ballot question vote. They can speak to the press on that, and they can also work for a ballot question committee on their own time. If the ballot question committee wants them to go to the meetings, a public official I'm talking about, that public official can attend. So can teachers. They can attend on their own time, these ballot question committee meetings. I just wanted to throw out a few of the activities that are legal for public officials, but there are more. If I were to go to the OCPF website, which is right here, and there are many ways to get to this guidance that I'm going to show you, but I'm going to go here to legal, the legal main page, and there's an interpretive bulletin here. Looks like we're digging real deep into the website, and we are. If I go down here into the 90s, You will see that there's an IB called Activities of Public Officials in Support or of Opposition to Ballot Questions. This is a very valuable interpretive bulletin. The director of my agency, his name's Bill, he's able to interpret the law, and this is our interpretation of the law. And you'll see that there's a list of permissible activities by public officials. And so it's IB 9202, IB 92-02, and you can find that on our website at ocpf.us. At the public meetings, the speech is unrestricted. I have gotten calls from people who say, I was at a meeting with the superintendent and she was adamant that the public should approve this, this project. And that's illegal, right? No, it's not. The speech of officials is unrestricted at these meetings. They can speak freely. They can distribute materials at these meetings, like I said. And the meetings may discuss the ballot question and any construction projects or tax increases. It can discuss it, and there can even be maybe perhaps a letter from the school committee in there where they took a vote supporting it, saying we support it for these reasons. We don't want to lose accreditation, and 80% of the project will be paid for by the state, and so it'd be wise of us as a town to pass this project. Those sorts of materials can be in the packet that's handed out at a meeting like that. Shouldn't be distributed proactively outside the meeting. You shouldn't make 1,000 packets, 100 people show up, and then say, everyone take the other 900 packets and give them to your neighbors. We've had cases like that before, and our legal departments determined that that's the prohibited use of public resources for a campaign purpose. All right, what's next here? Equal access. That's kind of a big one for the use of buildings, government buildings for campaign purposes. So the court case I talked about earlier in the 1970s, they said public resources may not be used for campaign purposes, but then they had a but they can if equal access is granted. Mostly we're talking about the use of public buildings. So maybe the girls basketball team has a huge game coming up on Friday. And the Vote Yes ballot question committee's like, man, they're going to be like 1,000 fans there. Why don't we get a little table? We'll set it up just outside the gym. We'll have all our materials there. No fundraising. There's never fundraising in a building, but we'll have our materials there. Voters can come up, fans, and talk to us about the project. Can they do that? How are they able to do that on public property? It's because of the court's equal access provision, where they said a building administrator can allow political activities on public property so long as equal access is granted to all. If one group or candidate or ballot question committee can do it, then all can do it under the same terms and conditions. So it's something to consider. I took this question once. A school principal wanted to allow the PTO, which was advocating for a ballot question, to stand by the school bus pickup line, and as kids got on the school bus, handed them flyers that were paid for privately, handed them flyers to take home to the parents. And we said, okay, equal access is triggered here. Do you really want to give equal access to the no group? Maybe some folks, you have no idea who they are, standing there and handing stuff out to the kids. You'd never allow that. So the answer should be no. You don't want to do that because you don't want to open up the possibility of equal access. So those are some of the things you have to discuss if you're going to take action on any of those things. But always know you can send an email or call us. We handle these kind of issues all the time, and a lot of times it's a case-by-case basis. Feel free to call us or email us, and we can give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down, give you a little guidance in that way. Let me just show you real quick how to contact us. Again, I'm going to the front page of the website, ocpf.us. If you go here to the phone number, every OCPF employee is listed. From my boss, Bill, all the way down to me, here, the communications guy. But these attorneys here, Sarah, Mora, and Everett, feel free to send them an email. Mora's real strong on these public resources issues. Feel free to send Mora an email or give her a call, and she'll be able to answer your questions on public resources. She specializes in that. this individual is a voter in town, and she's going on the website because guess what? She has no idea how to vote, but she's looking for information. And as a voter, she thinks, I want to go to the school department and I want to find information. And our office has said, that's okay. Posting information to your municipal website is not the prohibited distribution of information to the public. The public's actually going to your website to look for information. So feel free to post information on your website, but it should not take on the appearance of a campaign website. It, ultimately, in our vision would be that they go to the school website and there's a little button there that says, for information about the project, click here. And they'd click there, and then the documents would be there. Maybe the construction plans, maybe what would happen if it passes? What happens if it fails? And information like that the public can go to get information. So I guess that's some good news. You can post some information on the website if you're with the school department or the town. Please don't use government email to send information about the ballot question. Government email is considered a public resource and should not be used for ballot question political campaign purposes. Robocall system should not be used to distribute information to advocate concerning a ballot question. However, that time, date, place announcement I was talking about, that I think we talked about sending it by email before, you can use it. You can do a time, date, place announcement on using the robocall system. But again, please contact ethics, maybe share the script with us so that we can see what the message is going to say, give you some guidance in that department. So I've been talking most of this talk here about prohibited public resources. So how do you actually get the message out to the public? It's groups of people or entities that form ballot question committees. This is the ballot question committee organization form, the M101BQ. It's a one-page form, and this form is filled out, taken down to the town clerk, and voila, like that, they're a ballot question committee, a political committee. They can begin to raise and spend money to support or oppose a ballot question. Now, I know there are some elected officials on this call. You have limits, and you can't take money from, your friend's LLC, and there are all sorts of different prohibitions as a candidate. When it comes to ballot questions, it's almost a free-for-all. Not quite, but pretty close, where you can take as much money as you want from just about anybody. Unions, PTOs, businesses, corporations, and in unlimited amounts, these ballot question committees can take money. And they do. It gets into the tens of thousands of dollars in some cities or towns. It gets into the millions when you're talking about ballot questions on the state level. So these ballot question committees, their job is to keep track of the money they raise and the money they spend, and to put it into a campaign finance report that's filed with the town clerk 8 days before the election and 30 days after the election. So 2 reports to disclose all the money that was raised and spent to influence the vote on the ballot question. On the front page of our website, for those of you who may want to get involved with the ballot question committee, I run the news section here on the front page. I try and keep this checklist right here. This is a checklist for ballot question committees, municipal ballot question committees. If anyone's interested in a municipal ballot question committee, I'd review this checklist. It's not very long to figure out how to get started to form a ballot question committee. Now, an appointed and compensated public employee should not be treasurer of the ballot question committee, and really shouldn't even be chair. The statute doesn't expressly prohibit a public employee from being chair, but in practical terms, it's almost impossible. So a lot of times these ballot question committees are formed by school committee members, or maybe your local state rep will get involved and take some charge of the ballot question committee. Could be PTO members, things like that can form ballot question committees. So I wanted to provide for you a general outline of the campaign finance law and the restrictions on public employees. And we've done that in about 31 minutes or so. But I'm available. I can stick around at this time to answer your questions if you have any.
Jason, I'll start by first thanking you for that was obviously a lot in 30 minutes, but appreciate the clear and concise nature of it. Southborough is a town meeting community. You talked a lot about ballot questions. Our first vote, though, is going to be at a town meeting, which is going to require a 2/3 vote before it even ends up on a ballot. Can you speak to how any of that does or does not apply to what you just talked about for 30 minutes related to the town meeting piece?
Yeah. The campaign finance law does not touch town meeting. In other words, resources that are used to affect the vote at a town meeting are not subject to the campaign finance law and its restrictions. However, when a ballot question committee is on, a ballot question election is on the horizon, caution needs to be taken. So if a school department determines, you know what, I know, you know, hundreds of people will be at this town meeting, let's distribute voter information to those folks at town meeting to affect that vote. Technically, that is legal, but we highly recommend that your materials are run through our legal department first to ensure that they comply with the law. So yeah, town meeting is not subject to the campaign finance law generally, the rules that I just talked about.
Thank you. And one other question I had coming out of that was you talked a lot about the school newsletter. Obviously, our superintendent and the principals send out a lot of newsletters. We're obviously at the education phase. We're actually trying to understand what the community wants. We're obviously not trying to advocate anything, right? Or even have only, none of us have even formed our own views at this point of any of this. Can you confirm that it's okay for the superintendent to share information about what stage of the process we're in at this point via school newsletter? Or is that just because you had that in your prohibited slide, but then you talked about what a school official can do in a public meeting, and I couldn't necessarily tie the two.
Yeah. So the conservative answer is do not use a newsletter to distribute information about a potential ballot question that's coming up in the future without first reviewing it with OCPF. So the rule is newsletters should not be used to distribute information. In some cases, if it's town meeting focused, it could be okay. The issue at hand is the statute I spoke about out of chapter 53 that says you may not distribute information to the public concerning a ballot question unless you adopt these provisions. So the existence of that statute indicates to us that information shouldn't be distributed, even by newsletter, unless the provisions in that statute are adopted. So the answer is please don't do it unless you get a case-by-case thumbs up from OCPF's legal department.
Great. Great superintendent. So that might have created some questions from him.
Yeah, so in order for us to engage the community and talk about the process and how to get involved in the process, I can't see how we wouldn't use school communication tools. We're not talking about the question, we're talking about what's the vision for the community in terms of future building use. And that is the goal of the Neary Building Committee. So I can't see how we wouldn't use or why we wouldn't be allowed to use school communications to solicit input and feedback around future schools of Northborough and of Southborough.
Yeah, it's the school newsletter issue has been around for many years. I mean, before it used to be in paper form. I assume that you probably do it electronically now. And that's the stance of our office, is that newsletters should not be used even to send objectively just objective information informing the residents and of potential project. That is the rule, but there are exceptions. And so prior to distributing information that way, it should be reviewed by our legal department.
Greg, anything else from you before I go to Kathy?
No, I just want to explore that some more, but definitely we'll reach out and kind of process this with you further.
Go ahead, Kathy.
So my questions is going to follow Greg's on the same path. So ballot question we're talking about is specific. It's very narrow. It is whether the town will approve the proposed debt to be excluded from our tax levy cap. It doesn't talk about the actual project as far as the approval. That's going to be done at town meeting. So does that sway what you're saying as far as not being able to use a newsletter, et cetera, to talk about the project itself and we're not going to be talking about the debt. I mean, obviously the town's going to know that we're going to borrow money from this. That would be obvious. We're just, the newsletter would be talking about the project itself. We've got different choices here as far as whether to close the school or not, the design, et cetera. So I just want to make sure it's clear as far as what is on the ballot versus what I think Greg was asking, which is more the substantive issue. You know, what kind of project do you want to see, town?
Yes, so information like that is the type of information that can be posted to the website, that can be available at public meetings, rather than pushed out to newsletter subscribers unsolicited. In other words, you know, they're not saying, I want information about the project in town of a debt exclusion. They're getting the newsletter. They might be expecting to get information about the you know, what's going to be in the lunch menu and what teachers are doing. So our office has said that newsletters should not be used to send information unless there's an exception to it after review by our legal department. So it is frustrating, but the whole point of this is that public resources may not be used to share unsolicited information with the public using public resources. And so that's why we have come down on the side that newsletters should not be used. But that can be visited by our office by sending us information saying, hey, can we distribute this in a newsletter? And we can review it.
So what you're saying, Jason, is if one of the things we're going to vote on later in this meeting is setting up a project website. So if people find that website and opt into the communication through there, then we are then able to use that as our communication mechanism because people have opted into communication on this specific project from a town, you know, appointed board.
People opt into even just the regular school newsletter too. So any opt-in kind of function on the portion of the website that deals with the ballot question, you'd want to have the details reviewed by our legal department as well.
Okay.
The answer is you shouldn't do it unless you get the thumbs up specifically on a case-by-case basis from our legal department.
Okay, I'll go to Denise.
So I guess to take that one step further, if on the superintendent or the principal's newsletters is putting a link to our website that's going to be created specifically for this project, is that also a violation?
Oh, no, a link to a website in the newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
That
Obviously it has to, excuse me, obviously it's descriptive. The principal or the superintendent is going to say what this link is about. Is that also prohibited? So when they're on our newsletter, but via a link, they go to another site to get their information. Is that a violation?
That's a great question. That's one that that I'll address tomorrow. I'll ask around the office. And I'll send an email to Jason, and we'll answer your question that way.
Thank you.
Link on newsletter, yeah.
Yeah, and I think obviously Denise, depending on the answer to that, we can have Greg explore that with sample communication with Jason in his office, right, to figure out how to do this. And I guess Jim and your team, we're gonna look to you to see if you've seen other best practices in other communities. Not that we're going to copy them without checking with Jason first if it, doesn't align with what we've learned in the last 30 or so minutes. But I guess offline, I would appreciate some feedback of what you've seen work on other projects. Obviously, we're not advocating anything yet, but I get the perception of how it may be even this early on. So I think we would look to you on some of that as well.
Yep, yeah, definitely, and we can provide that guidance.
Are you all set, Denise, before I go to Roger?
I am, thank you.
All right, go ahead, Roger.
Thank you. Hey, Jason, you answered, Denise, you still have your hand up too also. You already answered this, but I'm gonna try to ask it again. I don't think I'm gonna ask it in a different way. It was really a point that Kathy made. So you mentioned that you cannot refer to a ballot question at your town meeting. And if our ballot question is only related to the debt exclusion that we want the voters to vote on, are you saying that you can't really talk about the new building project in these other communications? I mean, I just want to be, I think you said no, but maybe I didn't say it right here.
Yeah, the debt exclusion would be the ballot question in the future. So communications that may go out to the public about town meeting concerning the debt exclusion / project. Generally, those are allowed,
Okay.
but they should be reviewed first. They can cause a lot of complaints in a community. So you'd want to get those reviewed first by OCPF's legal department before sending them out. We always urge caution on that because it's a lot of times it's the appearance of campaigning for a ballot question that can get voters upset and feel like the process is unfair. So to review that with our legal department would be the best move.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any final questions for Jason before we move on tonight? All right, well, Jason, we greatly appreciate you joining us. You're certainly going to hear from us, obviously, and we look forward to, I guess, the answer to at least the one to-do you're taking away from tonight.
Yeah, the link on the newsletter. I'll get back to you tomorrow on that.
Okay, greatly appreciate it.
Take care.
Thank you. All right. I don't expect the next couple of parts to take very long, but given we are meeting next week, where I'm going to focus our time on is just getting some administrative items taken care of. And if we can't resolve them tonight, we will carry them to next week's meeting where we'll get a full and robust update of what our design and OPM team have been up to. But given the amount of activity, I figured it was worth spending another couple of minutes together. So next item is approval of meeting minutes from January 9th, 2024. Any comments or questions on those? All right, I'm going to move that we accept them as presented with a thanks to Mariana. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Roger. I saw you talking, Mark, but you weren't off mute. Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Denise?
I'm going to abstain because I wasn't in the full meeting. I left
Okay.
after the vote.
No problem. Mark?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
Kathy?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
And I'm I as well. So that is 1, 2, 3, 501. If I got that right. Next is this is a duly posted meeting of the Designer Selection Subcommittee as well, only with the intent that Roger, if your committee has read the minutes, for you to finalize your last two sets, but I don't have them, so I just didn't know if you and Mark had them or not.
I have them. I think Mark also has them also, right?
Okay. So I'm gonna hand this
so-
to you and let you run this with just a vote of you two.
Well, so, I'd accept, let's see, let me just take a look at, make sure I've got the dates right. See, and of course, they aren't posted on the town website yet because they haven't been approved. So, Mark, I would accept a motion to approve the, outstanding NBC Designer Subcommittee meeting minutes for November 21st, 2023, and November 29th for 2023. Would you like to make that motion?
Yes.
Okay, moved by Mark, and I will second it. Any discussion? All right, roll call vote. Mark,
Aye.
and I vote yes.
All right.
Are you gonna move into the dissolution, and do you
I
handle
am.
that, Jason?
Because all of us are gonna vote on that. So
Okay,
I just wanted to thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
You both again, plus Chris, who I know isn't able to be here tonight, for your work that led to the ultimate award to Arrow Street. I know there was a lot of work in there in a short period of time, and obviously a lot of competitive information there too, in terms of the strength of the firms that you had to look at. So with that all being said, your work has come to an end, so we need to officially dissolve the designer selection subcommittee. So I will move that we dissolve the designer selection subcommittee. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Denise,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Roger,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
and I am I as well. So that is a 6-0 vote. Next is chair member update, and it's related to the Community Center Exploration Committee. So next Tuesday, oh, go ahead, Roger.
I know we are now dissolved, but, and I know Chris isn't here, so I'd certainly like to thank Mark. And Chris, if he ever sees this, for their work on the committee. There was a lot of logistical things that we had to deal with, timelines to deal with. So both Mark and Chris did a great job. I will remove my hand here somehow or other.
Thank you all. All right, so Community Center Exploration Committee. So that committee is also planning to dissolve in the next 15 or so days, give or take. Mark, I forget where you landed on the dates there. But next week, a presentation will be made to the select board with the recommendations and consensus of that group. That group studied new construction for recreation, hypothetical library, senior center, as well as if Finn became available, the repurposing of Finn to satisfy some or all of those needs. It's made up of a huge variety of interest, right, with specific representatives from those population, but also at-large members. And the plan is to bring forward a plan that there's a lot of consensus that Finn would work and would work both financially and for all of the needs of each of those user groups well into the future. Of course, that's a moot point if we don't get to a point where there's school consolidation, but that is obviously an aspect that everyone needs to understand as we move forward. So the expectation is that after the committee makes their presentation, that obviously the committee will dissolve, and to the extent that we end up in a consolidation scenario down the road, the recommendation is going to be that there be a specific building committee for that specific project, with obviously the timing to be discussed interrelated to how we're proceeding. But it makes no sense to spend any more money or time until we know whether that's more than just a proof of concept at this point. So welcome to watch it. I think it's going to be sometime after 8 p.m. next week. or I will find the clip and circulate it just so people can see what the overall reaction is. Questions, comments on that? Okay. The next is district leadership team to work with the OPM and designer. So I right after we voted and got the contract executed as per the motions that we made at the last meeting, there was a brief meeting with the school administration and the design team and OPM team. And one of their, as they were coming up with their schedules, one of the immediate asks was for what they refer to as a district leadership team that they could be having interim meetings with in between committee meetings. The intent of those is not for them to be public in nature, right? So that it could not be a quorum of this committee. Otherwise, it makes it very difficult for a lot of reasons. This is very common, at least from my experience on building projects, to make meetings run smoother and give regular updates. In particular, it's unfortunately going to be a ton of time on our school administration team, and I thank them in advance for all that they have done, which you'll hear a tiny bit about tonight and a lot more next week. But I didn't feel comfortable just kind of proceeding with anything until we as a committee had a chance to meet. I did ask what other towns and committees have looked like and who they've brought forward from their voting members, right? So Greg and his team will deal with the non-voting members and who needs to be at what based on what they're discussing from an educational perspective. And the general recommendation in gist was that usually the chair is represented at those meetings in elected officials, of which we have two, our school committee member and our select board member. That would make 3 if we went that direction. We don't have to go that direction, and I think it's important for the committee to discuss, but that was the general idea I got from the initial discussions with the Skanska and the Arrow Street team and looking at what actually goes on in these meetings and what will happen. And by the way, it's a lot of time, what I can tell as well. So there's a natural time commitment. So gonna pause, see if there's questions, reaction. Doesn't require a formal vote, but I think it would be good to have consensus of the committee once we decide and land on who we want to be that, with the understanding that it cannot be any greater than 3. Go ahead, Roger.
Okay, well, you just made the point I was going to make. I think that greater than 3 is a quorum, correct? So we're maxed out with 3.
Correct.
Okay.
And I think it candidly also defeats the purpose of small working groups just trying
Right.
to triage issues. There's any major decision has to come back before the committee, but it's just to make sure that the progress is being met in between, and that of the 7 of us, right, that the voters are represented in all of that, because otherwise, as much as I trust our school administration team, there would be no voter representation in terms of connection to the community other than through the schools.
Well, I think that Mark and I can certainly attest that even small committees, especially where there are some aggressive time frames involved, when we were going back and forth with trying to make sure we fit into the state meetings on the designer, it's tough to get these meetings scheduled and get them scheduled with advance notice. If it has to be a public meeting, it's really tough.
Go ahead, Kathy. I see your hand up. Oh, sorry, Roger, you done?
Yes, sorry.
Go ahead, Kathy.
So I think it might help the group, me too, do we have a couple examples of things that would be expected to be discussed in this working group?
Jim, do you have any? Do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I mean, basically, as we go through the process with the feasibility, it would be things, decisions around, or sorry, not decisions, discussions around, variables in the I'm trying to think of some good examples here. If we're putting together the MSBA submission, and we need a little bit of guidance from the district side, as to what's going to go in there, how items are worded, ultimately, everything will come back here. But it's some of those interim decisions and discussions that need input from the district side, that we would be putting in there. I will say anything to do with dollars or, any formal submissions of anything would obviously come back to the full group. But it's, smaller issues that come up in between building committees that we would just need a little bit of guidance from the district. That doesn't necessarily need a vote. I think that would be the, umbrella of what we would be discussing.
I wish you could still give me one, just one that is one of those small non-voting issues. I'm having trouble understanding what would go in that group versus what needs to come back to this committee or one of the subcommittees, the formal subcommittees we have.
Yeah, so on another project, we had an issue where we were putting together the submission, and we wanted to go through the wording of the alternate site, which needs to be worded very carefully. However, the site that we were looking at, we needed input from the town side as to the legal ownership of one of the parcels. So just talking through that and brainstorming how best to word it in a way that would be acceptable to MSBA and acceptable to the town and not cause an issue. So we just needed input from the district. Now, the formal submission would go in front of the full building committee, but instead of waiting for a full building committee to have that discussion, we were able to have an interim meeting with that small working group to kind of walk through the strategy behind that. Is that helpful?
A little bit, but not completely.
Okay.
I'll give an example that I at least can envision is that team would also, I think, have a responsibility for making sure the project is moving at what we believe in Southborough should be the right pace and understands obviously the milestones that the MSBA has outlined, what the team is doing to meet those, right? And help accelerate or decelerate or create a vision offline to bring back to the committee of how we're going to accomplish it. So for example, if we get further along and something's dragging and we don't think it should be dragging, right? To just kind of help, identify issues, right? From our perspective that need then, the ultimate weigh in of the team. That's one thing I could envision and have seen in prior projects. Roger, I saw your hand up and then it went down.
Well, it seems to me that what I heard was, it's they'd be having discussions with the district almost, and a lot of it would be organizing things that would be coming back to the full committee. That was my sense, but I might be wrong about that. But that's what I sort of sensed that this group would do.
Well, if this is something that is SOP, and Jason, I don't know where you've seen it before. We didn't do it with public safety.
Yeah, we did. So remember John Lyons?
Yeah.
And I would go to a weekly meeting. Mark was there as well. And you back each other up too, right? Because, for example, like schedules get in the way, right? And you might not have everyone, as an example. But we had voting representation every time from both people that are on the committee as voting members and people that were on the committee as ex officio. So it was Mark and the Chiefs, for example, in that instance, plus John and myself.
All right, that's I guess close enough but that was the building part of it, not the actual design part of it. All right, I'm fine. Yeah, if this is what's normally done and MSBA and or the Arrow Street and Jim thinks that when you do it, I'm fine doing it. I probably need to see it far as really understanding what we're going to be talking about in this working group.
Yeah, I can say every project I've ever worked on, we've always had a smaller, they've been called different things, so leadership groups, but we've always had them, and it does help the process flow at a good pace.
Mark, go ahead.
Yeah. Is there any reporting back to the main group on decisions or
Well,
Or-
that would be the focus of every meeting. It would be my intent.
here's a concern I have is if I'm sitting there and I'm on the finance committee and I have to approve a bill and there's a bunch of discussions that are going on with the leadership group and I have no clue what was being discussed, what was being done, I'm just getting concerned, and we're in the early stages. The bills are relatively easy to deal with. How and where that decision got made to do that work or whatever is going to be a question I'll continue to ask. I get concerned because sometimes I find I walk into a meeting and yes, I have an agenda and yes, I pretty much know what's going on, but I don't. So if there's a lot of these meetings, I'm going to raise the red flag saying, hey, we need to have knowledge of that. Because you're taking three members of the committee have been involved in it, and it only takes 4 to get a vote. So if 2 of us are left in the dark because we don't know what the heck is going on, and then we have to take a vote, either we're going to be asking a ton of questions which should have been answered. It just leads me down a road of being uncomfortable if things are being done and decisions made that impact things. Just raising a concern.
Well, doesn't the finance subcommittee have a robust policy
Yeah,
on change orders and budgets and invoice approval? Like that's not
Yeah.
the intent of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I was going to chime in with that, Jason, that we have our approval thresholds for the finance subcommittee and the full committee. Any financial decisions would be made through the finance subcommittee. That's already the procedure there. This small working group would not be making anything, approving any bills or reviewing bills. That all financials still have to go through the finance subcommittee.
I wouldn't think much of this as financial at all. I would think this is just the opposite. This is, trying to answer questions from Arrow Street that would help them keep moving and not have to wait for a committee to get together because time is going to fly by here. So I could see this, Mark, as far as needing to be done. I'm just still not quite sure what those questions are. But by Jason's bringing up the way the public safety building was built, and how things got done to tee things up for the meeting, the official meeting, I get that. So I could see why this would be able to keep a very truncated design period moving. I just don't know what the questions are.
Well, I think maybe to help Mark, that whoever we decide on tonight can come back and tell you kind of what they worked on, so you can get comfortable with what's going on. Because we always have the means to change it at any point in time. I will tell you from my experience on public safety, those meetings usually led to full committee meetings. And Mark Purple can attest to that, having sat there and then seeing the agenda get posted right after the meeting of, hey, something, we hit ledge, we need money, or this happened and we're not happy with a contractor, or this and that. So it usually was the precipice for a meeting. I will also say, and my hope would be that if that group does its job, our time together is succinct and very action oriented, of where we hear reports, and, Arrow Street or Skanska or whoever else is in front of us is presenting us with a series of decisions that we need to make, and we say, ready, not ready, and if we're ready, do we approve or not approve, sort of thing. So almost helping make sure that they are ready for prime time, as opposed to just aimlessly calling a meeting to have a meeting which no one has time for. Just my 2 cents. I'll go to Roger.
I think, and Jason, I think you just said something, but I think the key word here is decision. I mean, whoever's on this group, I don't see this group actually making decisions. As I said before, I think they're really formulating information so that it'll enable the full committee to actually make the decisions. But that's the only way I think that's the working group could operate.
Agree. You have no authority to make decisions. Go ahead, Denise.
I agree. It's a conduit from a smaller venue to the larger venue, and that conduit allows a streamlined approach when it gets to the full committee. Is that sort of what we're doing here? That's how I understand
That's the
it.
goal.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Do we want a motion or try it out? How does everyone want to proceed?
Well, I think first you need to make a motion to establish this leadership team and then make a motion as to who's going to serve on it, I would think. You have to create it first.
No, we don't create it. We don't create it. It's just it's kind of it's not a subcommittee. It's not a
Okay.
formal so you still can make a motion. My intent would be a motion would be around the role that the committee member has, not a specific name.
Okay.
But that's where I'm at based on the guidance that we heard from Arrow Street and Skanska. I'm 1 vote out of 6 here right now. So I need to know where others want to go with this.
I think it makes sense because I believe that it's going to streamline the process. And as Roger said and pointed out, it can become very cumbersome in trying to get meetings and one thing we don't want to have happen is we don't want to come to a full board meeting and not be prepared and all of the nuances have not been worked out. So I would be in favor.
And to add on to what he says, I agree with what Denise said, but also not to deal with trivial stuff that we don't really need to deal with at this meeting. Knock the trivial questions, whatever, out of the way, so that you don't have to bring them forth when they're not really relevant to what we need to do here.
Denise, you're good?
I'm good.
All right, Roger?
It also seems to me, I mean, this is new to us, but it also seems to me that if this doesn't work, it can be changed. Right? I mean,
That's the best part about
it. There's no commitment, to continue to go forward with something that doesn't work. So it doesn't work, you change it.
All right, I'm going to put a motion on the floor and see where we want to go with it. So I'm going to move that for purposes of communication with the OPM and Skanska in between meetings, that this committee accepts the chair, school committee rep, and select board rep as the district leadership team. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All right, roll call vote. Denise?
Aye.
Mark? I saw your mouth move, but you were on mute.
Aye.
Roger?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
And I am I as well. So that is 6-0. Late addition to the agenda, but is authorization for communications subcommittee to engage a website designer. This was on there before this meeting tonight, which I think further emphasized the need for a separate project website. So the communications subcommittee met last Friday. We have a quote and 30-page proposal in hand from a website designer that has worked on other school projects. And the committee made a recommendation to forward it to the full committee. Normally, I would have forwarded it to the finance subcommittee and let them act on it, but given they're all here, and I think it's a big decision for the committee, I thought we would just do it all together, and I had previewed that with Kathy to make sure she was okay on the approach. So what we are looking for tonight is an authorization not to exceed $10,000, which I've confirmed with Jim narrowly fits within our other line item of the budget that remains. But this is obviously an important step in the process. The intent would be not to spend the full amount, but to have some room and flexibility for both the communication subcommittee and the broader committee as we move forward to adapt the website as the project unfolds. Right now, obviously, there's not a lot that would go into a website, but I think very quickly we're going to be seeing plans in other things, and it'll quickly take on a life of its own. We'll start getting frequently asked questions, etc. So that's really the ask from the communications subcommittee. We did vote 3-0 on that ask, but we do not have a final number because the goal is to negotiate with that designer a little more to either enter into some sort of fixed fee below that amount or to give us some leeway as we move forward. So, questions, comments, concerns?
Well, I think when we discussed it as a group, we discussed it because I think one of the key things to all of this is the amount of information, not misinformation, that's disseminated into the community. And I think the sooner we get a website together that can be accessed by all parties that are interested, whether it be parents, whether it be senior citizens, because they're a large voting bloc, whether it is parents, teachers, students, maybe students are interested in looking, but the sooner that we get this done, the better. And if we need to use somebody, and we're not looking to make this thing a magnificent graphic design. We just want to put, right now anyway, we're not putting pictures or anything, we're putting information on there, which I think is vitally important to spend this money.
I agree. And let me just say, I'm still not clear based on the first presentation what we can and can't do. So I think it's worth another discussion at some point. But I do agree with Jason's proposal to hire this company for a max of not to exceed 10K, at least to get it going tonight.
Is that a motion?
So moved.
There a sec? I'm going to take a second. And Mark, I saw your hand up. We'll come to you for discussion. So Jean says a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been seconded. Mark, discussion.
No, you've answered my question. I was going to ask how much money are we talking about? And where in the budget is that going?
It's gonna have to, Mark, we've got a little miscellaneous piece in our 950K warrant article, so it's gonna have to come out of that piece that was intended for other types of analysis that were gonna be done. So that number's starting to shrink. So that's
Yeah.
where it's gonna come out of.
Oh, okay. There is one item that I think we need to communicate even early on is getting people, at least the neighborhoods, in tune with what's going on at the site. So if we've got a drilling rig coming in to do testing, we need to get those dates up as to what's going on so that they're aware there's going to be a drilling rig running down Parkerville Road. It's simple communication, but we need to start at some point seeing some schedules of what the activities on the site are, not only for the neighborhood, but for parents. who go in and out of that school. So there's a lot of communication that could be done on this thing that we're barely touching on.
The good news is none of that's happening yet. And I think we're going to see a lot of that. That's going to be what we're going to focus our meeting on next week is I know Jim has been working with the district in Arrow Street on schedules, but they're in the educational visioning process right now, not the site analysis process, at least at this point. So we'll save that for next week. Very fair comment, Mark. And I think all the more reason to support the motion that's on the table because I think it's going to be a way to keep people updated if they're really interested with that stuff. Go ahead, Roger.
Well, just two quick things, and I did, I'm on that committee and we took a look at it. I like the presentation. And I'd like to echo Kathy's comment. I'm left confused about where we ended up after we talked to Brian from the state. I'm not even sure that I was a bit unclear on my last question to him, about, well, we don't really promote the debt exclusion. So I wonder are we going to have a further discussion on this at some point in time? It probably has to be sooner than later, right? I'm just curious.
My suggestion would be let's get the answer tomorrow on the website link question that I believe Denise had asked. Then I'll defer to Greg because I think it's his communication that's going to be potentially the most hindered here, depending on where they land. Let him potentially have a follow-on conversation, or I think we gave Jim some homework too of coming back with how, whether it's other superintendents, other building committees have communicated with the community. And then I think we'll have a follow-up conversation. So I'll have an agenda item for us next week, Roger. And then depending on how confused we are at that point, we can talk as a group of how we want to move forward, because I think it's massively critical that we understand this now and agree on how we're going to do this.
I got the sense that when we identified that, we were a public meeting, government, if you will, that was quite different than a lot of the things that he was really talking about. But
Me too. Me too.
Yeah, he didn't back off it.
He understood what was on the ballot at first, but then I guess he did. So I just
Right.
left. I just don't want to confuse it anymore, so I just stopped talking.
All right. I promise I'll be on the agenda next week, and I promise that those that kind of raise their hand on certain things, we'll follow up on it. Not that you didn't have anything else to do this week, Greg. All right. We have a motion on the website on the table. It's been seconded. Is there any further discussion related to the website? All right. Let's do a roll call vote. Denise?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Roger?
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. You moved on me, Roger, so that's out of order. Okay. Very briefly, this next one, and I'm going to ask that Jim and the Arrow Street team come with a very detailed plan next week of what's going on. But they have been meeting extensively on the educational visioning process, and that started today, where the Arrow Street team got their first look at our existing facilities and had their first discussions with certain faculty members and other members of the school administration team. It's going to continue with that same subsection, going to a few recently completed schools, Ashland, Acton, Boxborough, Harvard, on Wednesday. I realize that that's something that probably every single person here wants to do at certain points in time, but given it's obviously during the school day, we made the decision, and this was a good example of a decision that was made candidly outside, is to prioritize the school administration, given its educational visioning. And I commit as chair to finding other opportunities with Jim and the team to getting the full committee into these schools, just to kind of see some of the spaces. But it was critically important that the education team start working on that, as opposed to us. So I know a good 10 or so of your team, Greg, are headed to those schools this week. And working directly with Mike Perillo and the Arrow Street team to come back. We do anticipate bringing forward a schedule next week of how we're going to engage the town of Southborough in this process and start getting feedback and forms from there. Wouldn't be, I'd be very honest. We need to think about how we're going to do that based on tonight's discussion. But I didn't really see much limitations to public meetings, and that would be the intent of those discussions is really just trying to get feedback from the community of what they think and what their questions are to then continue to help inform our process. So more to come on that. I'd be really remiss to not acknowledge the effort that Greg and his entire team have had to put in to trying to figure out how to fit this into a 4 to 6 week cycle. And I think all of you know what time of year it is for the town in the budget process. Unfortunately, the timing is not, from what I can tell, optional if we want to stay kind of on the schedule. So I just wanted to really acknowledge the effort and thought that they're putting in to bring us, something to react to, as opposed to trying to make it on the fly here. It's challenging enough, but that's going to be where we're going to focus our time on next week. But given that the team was in the field this week, I felt it was important to acknowledge it while we're all together. Questions on that? Jim, I guess you'll have a distribution like well in advance of next weekend that I can share of like schedules and stuff like that. At least wherever we're at as of a certain date, maybe we cut it off as of Thursday.
Yep.
So people have time to digest it.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So expect an email from me on Friday or from Jim and the team with the materials for Monday. Any other questions on that? All right. Is there any public comment? There's actually no members of the public. It's all other Skanska and Arrow Street team members. Okay, meeting schedule. So we're going to meet next week. And then my intent is to follow a meeting schedule that follows the first Monday of each month, at least until the first Monday in March. So I will get I already calendared next week. I will calendar the first Monday in March. And then I'm told we're going to have to go to every other week after that, which I realize, especially for those of you involved in town meeting, that would be coming very close to that date. We will assess that as we go and only meet if necessary, just given the other meetings that will be going on. But just to level set on the expectation that at least gets us out another 30 days in terms of our meeting schedule. Of course, if at any point, go ahead, Kathy.
Can I confirm, maybe, are we gonna definitely continue doing these meetings via Zoom?
You cut in and out. I don't know if anyone else heard it perfectly, but I heard something about Zoom.
Are we gonna continue to do the meetings via Zoom?
For at least the next month,
Remote?
yes. I've asked the Arrow Street team to give me notice. There was going to come a point in time where we need to be in a room to be more effective meeting to start reviewing plans and stuff like that. We're not at that point yet. So my intent is to stay on Zoom until they need us in person, but to provide adequate notice about that. And we can always have a hybrid too, right? To the extent, but it just won't. I'm told it won't be as effective at certain meetings, but we will forecast those as I'm told. All right. Is there any other business this evening? All right. I'll make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Denise?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Roger?
Aye.
And I am I as well. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thanks, guys.